Good evening. Welcome to podcast number 16. Yeah, 16. Holy mackerel. I'm Dustin, and I'm joined today again with Tyler the Superhuman.
I'm here.
Yeah. Today we're going to go over a movie we watched for the fourth or fifth time or third time for some of us of Ip Man.
Ip Man.
Ip Man, which is, for those who don't know, Ip Man was Bruce Lee's teacher in the style of Wing Chun, which was Bruce Lee's first martial art, I believe.
His first one that he worked on.
Phenomenal movie starring Donnie Yen.
Donnie Yen.
Who has been in a number of different martial arts, has a number of different martial arts movies, has an extensive martial arts background, and in this movie he plays Ip Man. And I did a little bit of reading about the movie, and I don't know if they sensationalized this. It sounds to me like it might have been embellished a little bit, but before they started filming this movie, according to the Internet Movie Database, he only trained Wing Chun for like 9 months.
Donnie Yen did?
Donnie Yen did, yeah.
Really?
According to, I don't know how factual that is, but after watching the movie for, multiple viewings, I kind of find that hard to believe, because it looks to me like he is the most incredibly gifted martial artist, which, he very well could be. I have no doubt about the man's talent. He knows multiple styles and trained. Also, on the flip side of that, Ip Man 4 with Mike Tyson.
No, that was 3.
Oh, 3.
Part 3.
Excuse me, part 3. They also go on, and I think it's the same person that posted about him only training 9 months, goes on to say that the only injury on set was Mike Tyson
got injured,
broke or fractured a bone in his hand punching Donnie Yen.
Ooh.
Yeah, I don't know how much of that is communist propaganda, being that this is a Chinese movie and they're showing their Chinese pride. I can see where some of that might bleed through a little bit. Irregardless, the first one is an excellent movie.
Oh, the first one is so good.
There's for being a kung fu, quote unquote, kung fu movie, there's not a lot of wushu, meaning like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. A lot of wushu, a lot of the string, the guide wires,
climbing up the side of a building.
Yeah. It's more martial arts, like realism,
grounded,
literally. Yeah. And what I mean by wires is a lot of traditional kung fu movies have the wire where the actors are like suspended by wire and they're doing all these fantastic like flying through the air, kicking and swinging their swords, and like the Matrix. The Matrix is a perfect example of that. Neo fights Morpheus, and they're like flying through the air and doing all these extensive kicks and stuff. That's wushu.
Okay.
And it's actually and I could be way off base, but I believe, from my understanding, wushu is a style of martial arts that's very showy, and it's done for demonstration purposes. It's not so much like self-defense, like Taekwondo or Wing Chun or Kempo or whatever. It's more like this flamboyant, like it's a showy thing where we're going to do acrobatic type moves and stuff.
Huh.
So
that's cool.
So
now I'm learning.
Yeah. So the first one doesn't have too much of that. I think there might be a little bit, but it's not like over the top crazy. Like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon has a bunch of that, and that's the one that's coming to mind right now. But anyway, phenomenal movie, and as far as historical accuracy, I think they dip their toe into historical accuracy and then dip their toe into creative I don't know what you'd call it. You're the movie guy. What would you call that? They
that,
take creative license,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, creative license. That's a good term for
it. It takes place in the late 30s, early 40s, correct?
I think when the movie starts, it starts in 1935 in China.
Yeah.
And in the city of Foshan.
Foshan.
And so Ip Man is, a married man with a wife and a young son. And it's interesting how they set for those of you listening, hopefully you're going to go watch it after this.
It's on Netflix right now.
It's on Netflix right now. But there's certain things, we don't want to spoil for you, but other than that, you need to go see it. But, they open the first act with Ip Man is, he's a wealthy individual in the city of Foshan, which is also, this city is a hubbub, a center of martial arts schools.
And
teachers with their students, like dojos, and all these...
It seemed in the movie like there was one street, and every business on that street was a martial arts school. Yeah. Which I was like, oh, that's kind of cool.
That's kind of cool. And so you've got all these dojos, in, like you said, in one kind of center of, area, one street. And so Ip Man's this, but what makes him interesting is he's a shifu, everyone refers to him as shifu, but he doesn't have any students.
He doesn't really have a school.
He doesn't even have a school.
And in the movie, it kind of made it seem like it was on that street, or it was close by.
Close by. But he doesn't have a school. He doesn't have students, and he doesn't want to take on students, and people want to come and get trained by him, and he doesn't really...
Or they'll challenge him. Like, they want to get trained, or they'll challenge him.
They'll challenge him, yeah. He gets challenged quite a bit by the new master who's arriving in Foshan to open up his martial arts school. Then he challenges Ip Man, and then you've got the Master Jin guy who arrives with his ragtag group of bands, and they challenge all the other martial arts masters of the local schools, and I don't want to ruin that. But so he's constantly getting challenged, but he's got people asking him, hey, we want to come train with you, and will you teach me Wing Chun? And he's like, no, I don't want to do it. And he's just putting down on it in the first act of the film. In the first act, we see the before, the before everything happens, and we see him, who he is, and we kind of see the conflict he has with his wife and their distance and their relationship, and the conflict he has with his son, where he's putting more martial arts first, before his young son,
which is so really interesting because he's this well-to-do guy by all intents and purposes. It seems like the house is nice, it's all decorated and stuff. And all these guys come over and they're like, okay, I want to challenge you. And they shut the door and they have this fist fight in their living room. And stuff's getting knocked off the walls and broken and things. And his wife just seems to get madder and madder and madder. And then, you gotta watch some of that movie. So there's some comedic elements there as well, which I thought was really funny, especially because I have a wife who I irritate sometimes with my martial arts. So I can relate to that. I can relate to that a little bit. But really interesting thing about the movie, the first fight, he doesn't publicize it. He's very honorable about it. Remember in the first fight, the guy comes to him and is like, I want to challenge you or whatever.
That's the new master that comes to Foshan and wants to open a school, and he wants to see how good Ip Man is.
And is that the one where the guy with the kite sees him? Okay.
The guy's flying his kite and it crashes on Ip Man's property, and so he climbs the wall, and right in the middle of climbing the wall,
he sees this fight
between the two.
And Ip Man handles him pretty readily. He's not really breaking a sweat. Anyway, this kid that crashes the kite sees this thing and then goes and tells it everybody.
Yeah.
Right? Like he's like blabbing it to everyone.
And Ip Man, when he had beat the guy, they came to an agreement that he wouldn't, in order to kind of protect the other gentleman's reputation, he wouldn't go say, well, I just beat this guy.
Yeah.
The other guy essentially asked him, like, hey, can we keep this between us?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, I know you just beat me handily, but, like, can we not tell anybody because I need my business, I
don't want to lose face before I open my school.
Yeah. And so this kid that sees this goes and, like, his family owns this big restaurant. And that's where Ip Man is eating. Ip Man is eating in the restaurant. Right, and he's upstairs having, like, a business meeting. Like, they're talking about things. And this kid's downstairs and is like, and Ip Man was whooping his butt and doing all this stuff. And the guy hears about it. The guy that gets beaten hears about it, and it causes some huge conflict.
Some ruckus with the townspeople, and they're talking, and then he comes in, and they basically they get it squared away. They get it figured out, and it was just this guy saw this fight, ran his mouth,
and caused a whole mess of drama.
Yeah, the first act of the film is just setting up the characters, setting up Ip Man and his skills in Wing Chun, and the family and the other supporting characters, and then everything changes at the end of Act 1, and it goes into Act 2, which is
war.
Yeah.
Japan, and this is the part that I was a little unclear on in the movie. So it was either World War II was going on, or it was in the period right before World War II. I'm not sure. They don't really elaborate. They just say Japan attacks China, and the city that they're in is taken over, which is Foshan. Is basically taken over, and it's ruled by the Japanese at this point. They have control over the city
militarily.
Yeah. And Ip Man's house, he's basically evicted from his house because they take that as their headquarters or their base or their military whatever. That's their place now, Japan's. And then so he goes from like living on the high on the hog to like
shoveling coal.
Yeah. And so the movie takes a decidedly different tone, but it's interesting. And that was one thing that I started researching about, because after watching that for a handful of times, I was like, okay, how true is this?
Yeah.
And I found multiple accounts off of him, of Ip Man, but nothing that talked about that particular time period. There was he fled China during the Communist Revolution to Hong Kong, and he left part of his family there. He had a couple of kids at that point, and so it took him a couple of years to get them and come back. And there's multiple accounts. Some people say he had a mistress and had a whole nother family. Others say that he didn't. And I think it came down to after he passed away, there was some dispute as far as what goes on with the Wing Chun style. And because he kind of became the figurehead of it for a while. So that was really interesting, but it had nothing to do with the movie. And I could not find any historical clarification there. So my Google failed me, unfortunately. But,
well, and that stuff, hopefully we get to talk about some of that for Ip Man too.
Ip Man too, yeah.
Ip Man too, no. But, and then, so when we get into Act 2 of the film, and then you're in this war, and he's been evicted from his house has been seized, and him and his wife and kid have been, within the movie, within the context of the film, they have been pushed out. Then we come to find out this Japanese general is having these tournament style fights.
Yeah, which was I'm like, okay, that was cool, but I wonder how true that was. Because the premise is cool. He's basically inviting these guys to test their kung fu. I feel like I feel like a cheesy kung fu movie from the 70s. they're gonna test their kung fu.
Oh, like Enter the Dragon,
or no, like 36 Chambers of Shaolin, or like, which is a great movie. I really like
Bloodsport.
Bloodsport, or Wu-Tang Clan.
I don't think I haven't seen that.
It's a rap group, but they've taken their name from all these 70s and 80s kung fu movies.
Okay.
And like all their topics and their songs, and they pull edits out of the movie and use them in their songs and stuff. But anyway, so beside the point, I'm getting off on a side.
Mortal Kombat.
Yeah, Mortal Kombat. Yeah. So this Japanese general who looked kind of young to be a general, in my opinion. I don't know. What's the youngest general?
I don't know. That's a good question.
This guy looked like he was 30.
Yeah, he did. He looked pretty young.
Yeah. So anyway, he's like, basically they're looking for volunteers to come and have like a tournament style fight with kung fu versus. And they don't really elaborate what kind of Japanese martial art. I'm assuming it's supposed to be left generic, like they don't elaborate on
some
what
Japanese style.
Japanese style. Anyway, they have like this kind of test, and if the Chinese win, they get a bag of rice, which
was a lot
because they're starving and they're working in the coal mines or cotton mills or other hard labor, and he apparently is pretty awesome because he's handily handing these guys their lunch.
Oh, Ip Man?
No, the general.
Oh, we don't quite see him fight initially.
You see other Japanese soldiers
fighting other Chinese. So it's essentially Chinese martial artists versus the Japanese. And so Ip Man goes from being this kind of like this the quintessential. There's like a stereotype, or I don't know if stereotype's the right word, but there's a certain type of person or a character in movies that we also recognize elements from real life, where there's that character who wants to avoid war and wants to. Well,
he's the Mr. Miyagi of the movie.
Yeah, who, Ip Man?
Yeah.
Yeah, he wants to avoid fighting for real and avoid the conflict. But eventually he gets drugged into it, essentially by everything else that happens, and without going into too much detail.
It's the hero story, the hero's journey.
The hero's journey is he essentially goes from this guy that wants to sit things out to then he kind of gets forced into it, and then he becomes throughout the rest of the second act into Act 3, then he becomes the kind of the. He's looked to, when the film starts, he's looked to by the local townspeople as kind of like the protector of the town's honor, and like...
Yeah, when the hoodlums come in, they're all like, well, yeah, you beat me, but your turn's coming.
Yeah, exactly.
Your turn's coming. You just haven't found the right guy yet.
Yeah, and so he goes, it's just interesting, his character journey. He goes from being this guy who wants to sit things out, and he got his house taken away from him, and he's working in the coal mines, and then he starts seeing these war injustices or war crimes, you could say, happen, and he gets drug in, and then he goes from kind of being reactive as a character, then he transitions into being active, proactive, where he's going after and trying to remedy these things and these fights that he's getting into.
Now, did you see it as remedied, or like, I've had enough and I want my revenge?
I mean,
because
that's a good question. How did you see it?
Well, the first couple of times I saw it, I had that perspective, like, oh, he's gonna fix things now.
Yeah.
And then watching it this last time and really like sitting down and thinking about it, I think it was more like disgust. Like he'd had enough of all of this. He was tired. He was hungry. His wife was ill. His friends had died.
The Japanese were coming after him.
And they were being ruthless and treating people terribly. So it was like, I'm done. Now it's time to, like, I'm going to kick some ass.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. Which kind of flies in the face of the the Ip Man from the first act.
It does.
Ip Man
really
for
does.
the first act was like peace and like tranquil and Buddha-like and very respectful and like would not do anything to dishonor somebody and to keep somebody's honor intact. Was like, yeah, I'll keep that under my hat.
Yeah,
Don't worry, kind of thing. We won't talk about how I basically destroyed you behind closed doors. No problem. I can do that for you. To, okay, I've had enough.
Yeah.
Like, now it's on. Let's go.
Yeah, and I mean, he goes into, in the very middle of the movie, the great place. A great place for a great scene is you got to have a great scene in the middle of the movie. It's called the midpoint.
Yeah.
And in that one, that's when he has the big fight in the lair of the Japanese martial artists.
Yeah.
And that's when he fights the 10
guys.
It's a great scene. The lighting, the music, the acting, and he's like you said, the Ip Man in the first act. When he fought all these guys, it was like very like I feel like it was almost like a friendly fight. It was almost like a.
He wasn't trained to hurt people.
He was, maybe the other guys were trying to hurt him,
but like he had control over.
He had control. This fight, he's like beating these guys unconscious. Like he's letting loose. And so you're right, it's a totally different character.
Yeah. The cool thing I liked about both of those, the first act and the second act, is I thought in my limited knowledge of Wing Chun, I thought it was pretty accurate. Like a lot of the positions, the movements, the hands, the feet, the stance. He's working on a Wing Chun dummy, and he's doing the Pak Sao and the different things. And then he does those in the first couple of fights at the first act, and it's like, it looked to me, in my, like I said, limited knowledge of Wing Chun, it looked to me like he was doing actually traditional Wing Chun. And then about midpoint through the movie, he gets into a fight with the gang in the cotton mill.
That is after the midpoint. That's the second half of the second act.
Okay.
Second half of the second.
He does the long pole form.
Yes.
Which is traditional Wing Chun, and I think the butterfly knives. Or is that? I'm confusing that with a sequel movie.
Might be.
I think he just does the long pole.
He does the long pole.
I know he does the long pole.
Because he's slapping the people on the face.
Yeah. So that was actually added by Ip Man, I believe. The long pole. I could be wrong, and if I am wrong, please feel free to correct me. But I believe the long pole form, which is basically a wooden staff that was like 6 to 10 feet long. So long pole. I believe that was added to Wing Chun by him and his students for Wing Chun. So according to what I read on the internet, which take that with a grain of salt. Anyway, so it had traditional stuff that I found really interesting. And then it also, when he's fighting the 10 guys, he does some of the chain punches and stuff, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah. The Wing Chun blast.
That's what it's referred to. Yes.
I think so. Well, at the beginning of the film, it shows him, like one of the first shots is him working on the Wing Chun dummy.
Yeah.
Then at the end of the film, in the final fight, right, in the final boss battle, right, we'll call it that.
When he's fighting the general.
He's fighting the general. As he's fighting the general, it dissolves back to the beginning of the film, and it shows him working on the dummy, the Wing Chun dummy,
practicing the exercises,
doing the exercises that are now helping him just destroy this, destroy in this fight
physically, yeah.
And so, you're right. The traditional Wing Chun, and I personally never studied traditional Wing Chun.
I haven't either.
But Wing Dao.
It borrows a lot of elements from that. I have an interest in Wing Chun just from that because we train Wing Dao, but also just seeing as a kid, being somewhere as a kid and seeing a wooden dummy in a dojo and seeing like somebody playing around with it and doing some of the exercises. I have no idea if they were doing Wing Chun or if they were just punching this wooden dummy, but like that was cool. And hearing the noises and how all of those things work. The arms. So if you don't know what a Wing Chun dummy is, it's basically like think of a piece of wood about the diameter of a telephone pole.
Vertical.
About 5 foot, 6 foot tall, and then it has holes in it for these arms to come out of it. And I didn't know, but it makes all the noise, the wood clacking together. Those are supposed to be loose, apparently. They're supposed to just kind of float in there, and as you block and strike this thing, it's supposed to make that wood knocking together sound because they're supposed to simulate arm movements. So they're not stationary.
Yeah.
They don't just stay there. They're supposed to move a little bit.
I did not know that.
I didn't either. I was watching some other video on that a couple weeks back, and they were talking about that, and that's apparently that was the idea. And when you do some of the like rolls where you're like rolling your arm over the snaking your arm over it and under, you're supposed to actually make that arm make a circle or hit all four sides of the hole inside. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
So it's it was interesting. I was like, oh, okay, there's actual purpose for that. I just thought it was handcrafted and they were kind of like, oh, that's close enough. Let's train,
No, some thought went
but there's
into
an
it.
actual purpose to that. And then also on the bottom, it has another appendage or arm that comes out at a 45-degree angle and then makes a turn and goes to the ground for two purposes. One, to help add the stability to this pull, and then it's also for like the leg kicks,
right?
Right. The heel kick and the leg
to like the knee and the shin.
Yeah. So it serves its actual purpose. Like every piece of that thing has a specific purpose. Which I had like no clue. I was like, oh, that's cool. So I want to build one.
I don't know. It might be easier just to buy one.
Yeah, well, they're not cheap.
What, like $700 or something?
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't looked in a while.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Oh yeah, no, and he's working on that Wing Chun dummy. I don't think I've ever worked on one.
I've never used one either. And they apparently something else I read about that is in the first couple of forms that you learn, or first couple of exercises you learn, he's doing that at the beginning of the movie.
I hope he's actually doing
and he's
that.
And according to what I read, it was like pretty legit and pretty accurate. Of course, I don't train Wing Chuns. I don't know for certain, but that's my understanding.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's. I was just looking up Wing Chun dummies.
How much did you find one?
To see how much they are. It looks like a traditional one is probably about, a traditional Wing Chun wooden dummy is about $950. So, yeah.
Okay.
Not too bad. And there looks like there's some cheaper ones that you can get on, these websites we all know of that we order stuff from.
Oh, yeah.
For about half that price, but who knows? Maybe we could. Maybe we can get one.
Yeah.
I would really like to work on one of those because and it talks about. I think maybe it's more in the sequels. It goes more into it, but in Wing Dao we talk a lot about. Wu Ying Dao was elements were taken from Wing Chun, and helped form Wu Ying Dao. So, in our lineage of Wu Ying Dao, we have Wing Chun. And so, Sensei has recommended that, we watch these movies because it has, Wing Chun in it. And it's really interesting to see, because one of the major things that Wing Chun talks about, from reading books, from watching videos, and from what Sensei has talked about is, your center line theory.
Yeah.
You have your center line between. Well, there's actually 3 center lines. There's my center line, your center line,
and
our center line.
And the center line is basically, your center line is if you draw a line down the middle of your forehead, through your nose, through your midsection, to right down in between your feet. That's your center line.
That's your center line.
And controlling that center line, and when your hands are up, you cover that center line. You're trying to protect that. And so, which that all is very similar to Wing Chun, has elements of that. They exaggerate it more so than we do, I think, as far as where their feet are positioned and things like that. But they're all, those are all, I don't know what you'd say, theories, concepts. They're a style. Boxing has various different styles. Kempo has different styles. Wing Chun, all of those things. There's actually a few different versions of Wing Chun, depending on how far back you go.
Right. Okay. I think I'd heard something about that.
Yeah. So, totally sidetracked, but in some of the stuff that I was reading and doing research for the movie and this podcast, there were different theories about how it got started, how Wing Chun was invented. Some people say it was a Buddhist nun that invented this style,
and that her name was Wing Chun.
But there was another story I read about a guy who was married to this gal who used to be a Buddhist nun or worked at a Buddhist temple or something there. And he created the style but taught her and named it after her. There's all variations. And then there's another story about the red junk opera, which is a junk is a Chinese boat.
Huh.
And there was this traveling troupe of actors and comedians and magicians and whatnot who would travel around China and go and perform. And sometimes they'd go to like these shady areas and get attacked or mugged or robbed of their money. And so they developed this style to like help them like be safe, and they taught it to all the newer people that came on to their company. So there's variations of Wing Chun, and there's literally a line, I think it's called the red junk Wing Chun or something, going back like 1500s, 1600s. And so, which is a slight variation of Wing Chun based off of Ip Man and the movie and where he came from. It's wild. It's wild. So
so there's several theories of where it came from.
And some of the translations it's really difficult to do research, or at least in my experience it was, because I don't speak Cantonese or Mandarin or read any of those, and you click on so many links and you go back so far, and then next thing you know, it's like, now this is in Chinese or Mandarin or whatever, and I'm like, I need to go back because I can't read this one, Yeah. So my information that I got, I wouldn't write a book on it or quote anything because I have no way of really verifying how authentic or how true or factual any of this was. But it was fascinating. It was really cool. I enjoyed watching the movie again and like really trying to break it down and theorize about what was going on. And then that kind of like led me down the rabbit hole to being like, oh, let's check out this Wing Chun dummy. Let's check out, I'm learning about how those things are done and there's an actual reason behind those, and the arms to be kind of floating in their positions, and then that sort of stuff.
Huh.
So
yeah, that's more than I knew. Yeah, so for everyone out there listening, gotta watch it.
You got it.
It's
if you have
great.
even a passing interest in martial arts, I think that is up there. That's up there with. I think that'll be a classic martial arts movie. In a good, it's 10 years old or more.
2008. So it was made in 2008.
Okay.
Or released in 2008.
Yeah. So.
But there's a certain timelessness to it. When I was watching it, it was, maybe because the coloring is in some of the stuff, it's more of a black and white kind of like.
Yeah.
And it's got that faded look.
Well, somebody did take some artistic. It's not just a generic violent movie.
No.
Or action movie. It's got some real depth to it. You can watch it on many different levels. You can watch it purely on the surface as an action movie or a martial arts movie and get that.
Yeah.
But it also has some artistic merit too. Like you were saying, the coloring. The first half of the movie is bright and airy and very beautiful.
That's
the second
first
half
act.
of the first act. The
yeah.
second act of the movie is dark and almost black and white, very grainy, and it's to simulate the difference in the atmosphere of the story, which you don't really see that too much, I don't think, in action movies, at least not in American cinema.
No. Stylistic choices.
Yeah.
And that helped convey the story just really
tremendously.
Good. Yeah, and I remember, I think I saw it for the first time probably like 6 or 7 years ago. Was the first time I saw it. And it just felt real timeless. It's like The Wizard of Oz. It's like, that movie, it just, to me, it feels like it's one of those movies that...
It doesn't feel like you're watching an old movie.
It doesn't feel like a new movie or an old movie. It's just, it's frozen in time somehow.
Yeah.
Like The Wizard of Oz, that's a timeless film,
Yes, yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
But yeah, so, with everything, like you're saying, you can watch it on a physical level, just with the fights. You can watch it, this time I really paid attention to, what's going on, how, and this is really applicable to martial artists. In the film, when Ip Man is giving so much of his time and dedication to Wing Chun and these fights, these challenges by all these people, but what then he is neglecting is his wife, his daughter, his son, his wife and his son. And it's so interesting. He comes to realize that at some point in the film, and then that is kind of rectified in itself that way, but it's just, you can watch it on that level too.
Yeah, and the other thing that was really interesting about that, through the series of films, he kind of yo-yos back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
And like, he goes super serious martial arts, neglect family, feels guilty, comes back to that. And then like, it's not like this linear path.
It's not like, it's fixed.
That's taken care of. Now I can go back to ignoring you.
Yeah.
Which is kind of true to life. You kind of ebb and flow in things. You get super passionate about it, and then you might burn out, or something else happens. Your car breaks down, or you have to move or something, and so you have to like pull back from your passion, and then you get everything taken care of, and then it's full steam ahead again.
So interesting. Yeah. Well, everyone, you need to watch that film.
Absolutely. It's on Netflix, or I do believe it's also on Amazon Prime if you have that. It's Ip Man, IPMAN. Totally worth the hour and 35, 40 minutes length. Even if you have just a passing interest in martial arts, it's cool. Donnie Yen is does a phenomenal job as a martial artist, as an actor. He's been in multiple movies. He's done stunt work, choreography, super talented martial artist from what I've seen. Check it out. Check it out. Let us know.
Yeah, let us know. And this is one of the few film series that the first one is good, the second one's better, the third one is excellent, and the fourth one is, I think, the best one.
Really? You think the fourth one is the best one?
I think,
okay.
I just think it's that rare series of films.
It doesn't jump the shark.
That gets better with each one.
Okay.
You know,
yeah.
it's you know, it's just each one gets better and better to where it's not like, oh, the first one was great, the second one was, not as good. You know, with those series of movies where they get worse and worse.
Yes.
This is the opposite. And there's a few film series I can think of to do that, but this is one. So if you like the first one, you're probably gonna love like the second.
And
one.
all four of them are on Netflix right now.
They're all four on Netflix.
Yeah, you got Memorial Day weekend coming up. Bust that out.
Just binge all four M1 movies.
Yeah. Let us know what you think if you do watch it, and we're all ears. I think that we're going to call it good. We're going to try and hit this up again next weekend. We did miss last week. Unforeseen circumstances did kind of get in the way, but we're back at it and ready to rock and roll. So, again, please listen, subscribe, give us a like, whatever, on whatever platform, review, whatever platform that you are listening to us on. Please help us out that way. That's how we get, how we know if what we're doing is worth our time, and we really enjoy doing this. Drop us an email at theformlesspod@gmail.com. We're on Twitter at formless_the, and also on Instagram at the Formless Podcast. I started a Facebook group for the podcast too. It's the Formless Podcast. It's an open group right now. I don't know what to do with that. So if you have any ideas, I'm all ears. Help us out. Also, we had talked a little bit about doing some sort of a giveaway t-shirt kind of thing. And I got some more info on that, but it's a little early to spill the beans on all of it. So working on it. It's in the works. And thank you for all the feedback that we have gotten. All the listens and all that stuff has been really inspiring for me. I know it makes me smile a little bit every time I see that, hey, all right, we got some new listener that's listening via VPN from Germany or something like that. It's always kind of cool. So keep it up. Thank you, and have a wonderful night.
Thank you.